this is going to be really fun. And a small group like this, we can, you don't bother with any courtesy of interrupting me. Just go ahead and say something if you have something to interject. We're going to do testimonials here from 3 of us that have actually had encounters with wild things in the wilderness. We're going to have a rattlesnake bite survivor talk about what that personal experience was like. We're going to have a scorpion sting survivor also talk about what that was like. And last but not least, a very, very rare opportunity to hear firsthand what it was like to be envenomated by the nefarious asp caterpillar. Most of us don't even know what an asp caterpillar is. I'm going to show you a picture of them. But when I met the ranger, the river ranger for the Verde River, whose entire career has just been going down the river again and again, helping people who are in trouble or cleaning up garbage or whatever, he told me that he'd heard of the asp spider, or the asp caterpillar, but had never encountered anybody who had actually been envenomated by them. So this will be an interesting little session. So there's a lot of ground to cover here, so I may as well get started. I do want to have a couple of announcements to make. This is Olivia's last month. Olivia has accepted a position as athletic director of Basis Charter School in Preston. So we wanted to wish her well and give her a good send-off for that today. Let's hear it for Olivia. Maybe she'll come out and take a bow sometime. So let's get. We also have. We're going to have a drawing for some interesting things that you can find valuable for your experiences out in the wilderness. So I entitled this. We titled this "Summer Hazards from Sunburns to Snake Bites." So staying cool, of course, is important, like our friend Bowser here is doing. Now, one thing we're talking about here is that what's different about exercising in the warmer months than in the winter months? Well, sure, it's good to get out any time of year. There are definitely different things to consider. But getting out in the warmer months, you're around all that green stuff, the foliage, the pine trees, the grasses, the birds singing, all of those wonderful things. And that has an added benefit for your health beyond just walking on the treadmill at the gym or doing your exercises. And that added benefit is the result of what's called biophilia. And this thinker here, who looks a little like Alan Alda, but is actually Edward O. Wilson, defined biophilia. He's one of the great biologists of the 20th and 21st century. And he defined biophilia as that process of connection that we feel between ourselves and the natural world. And he's talking about life and how we feel connected to life. And when we're alone, we feel isolated, especially if we're inside a 4-wall building without windows. When we designed this office, we made each window so it could be opened so that we could get fresh air and maybe hear a bird sing. And we actually do have birds nesting in the vicinity around here. The roadrunners often will nest in this area. But Dr. Wilson defined biophilia as that connection. And here's a quote from him that is, it involves exploring and affiliating with life in a deep and complicated process that includes a dependence of our existence on this propensity to connect with the natural world. And all of our hope and dreams for the future arises from this feeling of life regenerating itself. That's what's so neat about spring and hearing the birds singing and the regeneration of the whole life cycle. So green exercise is the process of getting out there where it's green and exercising. Fairly simple. Expose yourself to nature. If you're not up to exercising, at least get out and enjoy the fresh air. That has its beneficial effects for your health, lowers your blood pressure, lowers your stress hormones, just being outside. A place that's quiet, there's not a lot of racket out there. Try to pick somewhere like a park or we're surrounded by parks, and the entire national forest, of course, is like a big park for us. So we're so lucky and we're spoiled here with this wonderful climate. So let's start talking about the things we have to watch out for as we get out there. So sunburn is a big one, and it's not just sunburn. Sunburn is like the tip of the iceberg because, you know, sunburn involves the UVB, the UV ultraviolet B rays, and UVA are the aging and skin damage and skin cancer rays. So they're actually more important. The UVA rays, which lead to skin cancer. Now, the bad thing about UVA is that it passes through glass, so if you're going on a long drive, you ought to sunscreen up so that you're not getting those UVA rays. Also, if you're working in an office that has sunlight coming through a window, a plate glass window, you need to use your sunscreen to prevent that premature aging and sun damage that leads to skin cancer. So the UVB are actually lightweights. They cause the sunburn, but they're more obvious. You know when you're getting a sunburn, or you know when you've gotten one, and yet you will often lose track of your UVA exposure. So which sunscreen are you going to go with? The higher the number, the better. Anything over 30 is good. Anything over 100 is maybe overdoing it. But if you're prone to skin cancers, if you've had melanoma, I would go with the highest number that you can find, and also get the waterproof stuff that will stay on your skin, and you need to reapply it every 2 hours so that you have a continuous effect. So this describes how it's measured. The SPF is defined here, and so SPF 15 will give you 93% protection from, so if you had 100 photons or light particles entering your skin, only 7 of them would get through. And a 30 SPF involves 97% protection. So when you're looking at the curve here, even an SPF 5 gives you about 80% protection. So why not just use that? Well, it's not that much more expensive to get an SPF 30 or 50, and you block more of the UVA rays, the really bad ones that are going to increase your risk of skin cancer. So also remember, most of you youngsters will always want your tan. Maybe even go to a tanning booth in the winter time so you look good. You're actually damaging your skin by doing that, and tan skin is not healthy skin. And this is to remind you of that. Now, let's go through the skin cancer just for fun. The basal cell skin cancer, most of us have had those. They're the good ones. These cannot kill you. They're the nuisance cancer. They're the only cancer that does not affect your ability to get life insurance. I know that because I filled out a questionnaire for life insurance one time, and I got down through my health history and got to, have you ever had cancer, any cancer other than basal cell cancer? And I just had one taken off my nose, and I said, okay, no. I was able to get through that questionnaire pretty well. So that's the one that has a pearly sort of surface to it. They need to come off because they're not going to go away by themselves. They can either be frozen or cauterized or shaved off. And we do some of that here, and the dermatologists do a great job with it too. Now the squamous cell cancer, that's the kind of intermediate one. It rarely goes internally, but it can spread to regional lymph nodes, cause metastases, even cause a threat to your life. So these are the ones that start out as the scaly patches. There's no pigment to them. They're just like a scaly part of your skin, a rough spot that can be somewhat thickened. And so that needs to get checked out. Okay, perfect. Then there's the melanoma. This is the one we all fear, because this is the one that's a serious threat to our lives, the melanoma. And usually they're darkly pigmented. They're funny looking things. They can have, we call them the patriotic cancer, because they're often red, white, and blue. You have a blue area, a white area, a red area, and they look like they're just really disorganized. They're not well defined on the skin, and they can be rapidly growing. And the exception is the nodular one, which is the most aggressive, but it'll start out just looking like a well-defined lump, but it's growing quickly. So that one, if you have a new skin lesion that's colored or even not, get in here and let's look at it, or get to your dermatologist. Melanoma rates for climbing. We're in the Melanoma Belt here across the southern tier of states, and I like to use that analogy of the belt, or that it's sort of like a pond, because one area where gardeners get melanoma, and men especially, men who work outside, their melanoma belt is right here along the belt line, as well as the gardeners, because they're leaning over in the sun. If they put sunscreen on, they rarely remember to put it here. And I know when I'm bicycling, I'll often get a sunburn right along my belt line. So remember the melanoma belt. Then we need to protect our skin, and not just our skin, but also our eyes. So we need to use a UV blocking sunglasses. The ultraviolet light needs to be blocked, and if you're out on water, it's also good to get the polarized sunglasses, so you can have less effect from the glare off of the water. So a broad hat also helps protect your skin. Now when you're looking at your risk of ultraviolet light, you often think, okay, I'm going to wear my hat, I've got my long sleeve shirt on, I've got gloves on, why do I need to even wear sunscreen? Because I'm not going to be in direct sunlight. The reason for that is that ultraviolet light diffuses out of the sky. It diffuses out from the horizon. So anywhere you can see blue sky, that UV is coming at you, even if the direct sunlight is not. It can be reflected off of lightly colored earth or pavement. And when you're at the beach, it's a notorious example, because people put up their umbrella, say, okay, I'm fine, I'm staying under the umbrella all day, I'm not going to get a sunburn. But there's all that sky facing them from the beach and the ocean, and the ultraviolet is coming at them, so you can get horrible sunburns from the beach, even if you're not in direct sunlight.
Okay, now before we move on, I'm going to demonstrate how to use your sunscreen and show you what sun protection looks like. Okay, when you're looking for a sunscreen, we like to buy SPF 50. Sometimes you can get a good deal on something higher than that. You saw from that graph that we had that the SPF 30 gives you good protection. When you get over 50, you get very, very high protection. And like Dan was saying, it doesn't cost much more to get more protection. We spend a lot of time outdoors, so we tend to use 50 or greater. You want to have the seal from the, what is it, the Skin Cancer Foundation. I thought it was College of Dermatologists, but it's the Skin Cancer Foundation that does the studies on SPF. And so look for the Skin Cancer Foundation seal. That means it is protecting against both UVA and UVB. Especially if you're looking for budgets, sunscreen. Lots of times you'll get a good sunscreen that is not protecting against both UVA and UVB. You've got to have both of them in there. This is a waterproof one is really important. You think, well, I'm not going to go in the water with it. But if you sweat, which you probably are going to sweat if you're going to be out in the heat, then you do need a waterproof sunscreen. And so the big thing that I notice is I have a friend who I say, do you want some sunscreen? And she says, yeah, I have plenty. She's got this much. And she'll rub it into her hands real good and make a thin veneer over both of her arms and her face and her neck. And that really doesn't do it. If you're in shorts and a short sleeve shirt, so I have a short sleeve shirt here and I have long pants on. But for shorts and a short sleeve shirt, you're going to use an ounce of sunscreen, which is a shot glass full, 2 tablespoons, okay? And so if you put an ounce in the palm of your hand, you're going to end up with a big old glob and you're going to be frustrated and not use it again. So use repeated applications. So I just put about a tablespoon in my hand and rub it in, because where the sunscreen is really working it forms a little bond to the surface layer of your skin, and that's how it protects you. Okay, so rub it in. Rub it in places that might get burnt if your clothing shifts a little bit. Okay, so make sure that you're well protected. I already have sun damage on my forearms, quite a bit of sun damage on my forearms, so I tend to put it everywhere. Okay, so I just did my arms, and I used half an ounce, you know, and you can't just slap it on and then run out the door. When you're anticipating going outside, you're supposed to put this stuff on 30 minutes before you go outside, okay? So putting it on and going outside, you're going to get quite a bit of sun exposure before you're really getting the protection from the sunscreen. So put the sunscreen on early in anticipation of going outside. Don't do it last thing, do it first thing, and then freshen it up before you go out, okay? And that way you'll get better protection. So a lot of people don't like the way that sunscreen gets in their eyes, and I don't have much of a solution for that. I know that this sunscreen that we use, I really don't have much problem with it when it gets in my eyes. But a place where you really get a lot of sun damage is here on your chest, and so put an extra layer there. Don't forget to get up under here, because even though the sun's coming down here, the sun rays are going to reflect from all sorts of stuff. So be sure you get your neck and your ears and your face, and rub it in really good. And if you decide to not do your forehead because you're somebody who's really sensitive to it and your eyes burn when the sweat gets in your eyes with the sunscreen, then that's fine. But just remember that your head is not protected, and you need to be wearing your hat while you're out. So if you get hot and you don't want to wear your hat anymore, that's not going to cut it if you haven't protected yourself. So be sure and protect yourself. So I just used 2 tablespoons of sunscreen, an ounce of sunscreen on just my arms and my face. And I can feel that it's there, but I don't feel like, you know, icky, gloppy. I don't have stuff dripping off of me, you know. So you can do it, but just don't say, I'm going to follow the recommendation and put an ounce of it in your hand and then try to do something with it, because you'll be very frustrated with it. Okay, so I got my sunscreen on. I have my sun shirt. The sun shirts are woven in a way that give you added protection against the sun. So I'm going to put my sun shirt on. I tend to not like the way that a shirt feels buttoned around me, so I'll take a bandana or a lightweight bandana and tie it here, and that'll protect my chest some more. If you're not going to, you've got to protect your chest with something. So I'm going to button my shirt right now. I have my broad-brimmed hat, and Arizona, the wind blows, so I have a way to keep it on. And a broad-brimmed hat, I bought this for $5, and it's a really great straw hat that gives me plenty of shade. And then, last but not least, my big, wide, oh, I broke them, wraparound sunglasses. Do you have yours? They're in your office, aren't they?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll bring down. So your big, wide, wraparound sunglasses. And then you're ready to go out in the sun. So remember, any place that is exposed, not where you think the sun is going to get you, but if it's exposed to the air, it's exposed to the sunlight.
So if you put that 50 really good all down your chest, why do you still need the shirt?
Just added protection. I've damaged my skin quite a bit when I was younger, and so I'm pretty careful about it. You know, I do get the belt.
And we haven't gotten to the bugs yet.
Yeah, the bugs yet too. I'm also one of those people that's a bug magnet.
Right.
Yeah, I am a bug magnet.
Yeah, if you don't want to get bit by a mosquito, take Nina with you. They'll all go after her.
Yeah, that's right. Just take me, and you guys won't have problems. So.
Where'd you get your shirt?
There you go. What?
Where'd you get your shirt?
The place down in Phoenix.
Was it Bass Pro Shop?
Bass Pro Shop. There you go. I have to have something to do while Dan's at Bass Pro Shop. So,
Yeah.
okay. All
Thanks,
right.
Nina. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was dehydration and heat stroke. So as we age, we lose our sense of thirst. So we don't have that cue to drink extra fluids when we're out in the heat. And so we have to look at the other cues, which is, I've known some people who have a timer on their watch that just goes off every hour, so that's their cue to drink a liter of water when they're out hiking. And that's what you should have if you're hiking or working outdoors in the heat, like above 85 degrees, you need to consume about a liter an hour, which is a lot of water. And if you don't, your next symptom may be a feeling of fatigue, dizziness, lightheadedness, and those are signs of dehydration. And then if you start getting a chilly feeling and weakness and confusion, that's going a little too far. That's the pending heat exhaustion. And if you then develop a lack of sweating and a high body temperature and a loss of consciousness, then that's heat stroke, and that's deadly. So if you can stem that before it gets to the deadly point, you're miles ahead. And so watch out for your friends. That's why we always recommend that you go hiking with a buddy, so that you can remind each other to drink and to cool off. And up here is where you want to get the water going, and if you're getting symptoms, get into some shade, sit down and rest, because if you're burning more calories, you're burning more energy, you're producing more heat. You want to stop producing heat, and that involves stopping what you're doing. Okay, here's some fun stuff. The mosquitoes and their friends. So we've all been attacked by mosquitoes. Arizona doesn't have that many of them for the most part, but they're out there, and they can carry some diseases. And the one that's been in the news the last few years is West Nile virus in 2014 in Arizona. There were only 75 cases of West Nile virus, none of them around here. They were all in the Maricopa County area or down around Yuma. They like a warmer area. So we're pretty lucky here not to have disease-carrying mosquitoes, and malaria also is unheard of in our neighborhood. So we also have the no-see-ums, or the biting midges, and some people think they've had a food allergy or they're getting measles or whatever when they come in and have all of these little red dots that are itchy and red and swollen, and they never even see the midges. They're so small. They're just so tiny. That's how they came up with the common name no-see-um, because you rarely do see them. And then we have other critters like the ticks, and ticks, of course, can carry diseases like Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and they can carry Lyme disease, and they're pretty rare here. I've never had a tick bite in Arizona, knock on wood. I've never, if the dog has had one or two, but we're generally pretty darn lucky here. If you want to limit your exposure to them, of course, wearing tightly fitting ankles, like tucking your pant legs into your socks. I know that's not very stylish, but it will keep the critters from crawling up your legs, and that's a good repellent for the ticks. Now, speaking of repellents, we have different preparations that you can use for mosquito repellents, like DEET is the big one. Diethyltoluene is the scientific name for it, and it was developed by Cutter Laboratories in Berkeley, California years ago, and it's been the gold standard for insect repellents. It also will work against no-see-ums to some degree, but it's mostly the mosquitoes. And there's an alternative to this if you don't want to use something named diethyltoluene. You'd like to use something more natural, and that's the lemon eucalyptus oil. That sounds a lot more organic, and it has been shown to be effective in repelling mosquitoes and biting midges.
Could I comment about ticks real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Many of you know that I'm a veterinarian, and I often get questions about ticks because dogs get ticks a lot. So we say we don't have ticks in Arizona. Supposedly we don't have very many ticks in Arizona. And it's true that out in the woods we don't have many ticks in Arizona. If you have pets and they get ticks, there are cattle ticks that get in their ears. And there are also the brown dog ticks, which get on their skin, and those are the ones that puff up really big and are really gross. Those are not ticks that carry the diseases. Okay, so the brown dog tick and the kettle tick that dogs and cats get do not carry diseases. They can't, even if you were to get one on you, even if one were to bite you, which would be extremely rare, you're not going to get any diseases from those ticks. They do carry diseases for dogs, but they don't carry any diseases that are going to get humans. These guys are a different species of ticks. These are Dermacentor, and they do have them in the White Mountains. So if you're going to be hiking in the White Mountains, then particularly if you're going to be going off trail and getting in some of the brush, then you need to do a tick check afterwards, put some DEET around your sleeves and around the bottoms of your pants, and make sure that you don't get those. So there are areas that have tick infestations, but most of the time when you see a tick on your dog, it's not a health risk to you. Oh, and another comment is, we gave a picture of a wasp there, but you know, the ones that really pack the punch are the Tarantula Wasps, the big black ones. They have a very powerfully painful sting. So when you see those, you want to steer clear. And they're the big ones that fly around really slow, looking for a tarantula to lay an egg in. They actually lay their egg in the tarantula, and then the egg hatches and the larva feeds on the tarantula as it's growing. Really nice. And you know those cute little fuzzy red, what are they called? Ant lions, is that right?
Oh.
Yeah. Those were actually a flightless wasp, and they have a sting too. So don't harass those guys either. Okay? All right. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Nita. It's great being married to a veterinarian. Learned all kinds of stuff from Nita. And when we go fishing and we're going to actually have fish for dinner, she doesn't clean the fish, she dissects them. And she'll have them spread out on a rock, have the fish entrails spread out on a rock and say, okay, this is what was in the stomach. This one had a tumor on its intestine. So it's an education.
Oil of lemon eucalyptus.
Now, with bees, anybody here have an anaphylactic reaction to bees? Now, there's a life-threatening problem. You don't want that. But if you know anybody who does, and you're going hiking with them, make sure they have their kit, their EpiPen kit, which is life-saving. It's epinephrine that they can inject, or you can inject in them with a minimal of training. You really don't need any training for it. It's pretty much automated. You just stab them in the leg with it, and the epinephrine is released, which can then start their heart beating again and give them a blood pressure from that shock of anaphylaxis, which does kill people. So here's the different repellents, the DEET and the lemon eucalyptus. Okay, now here we are with the really fun stuff here, the snakes and the Gila Monster and other things that are poisonous. Arizona has 13 different rattlesnake species. They're all dangerous. You don't want to be bitten by one, so prevention is the key. And so how do you prevent being bit from them? Well, the rattlesnake is really amazing. It doesn't want to waste its venom on us. It really wants to leave us alone. So we have to make a mistake that gets us bitten. They're not going to come looking for you. Okay? So you don't have to worry about them stalking you or sneaking up on you to bite you. It just doesn't happen. They do it defensively. They use their venom and their bite to kill their prey because they are carnivorous. And they have a system of infrared monitoring that's called the PIT, and they have infrared monitors on their head that can actually scan an organism, a little rat, a mouse, a toad, whatever, and their system then determines the volume of venom that's needed to fill their venom sac to kill that specific prey. So if you're harassing a rattlesnake, and we read about these in the paper or about the news that someone was out hunting and he had too much to drink and he found a rattlesnake and was harassing it with a stick to impress his buddies or whatever. That snake is then scanning you, it's scanning him to determine the dose it's going to take to kill them. So that's why it's so deadly when you have a snake bite that someone has been harassing, that's more deadly by far. And usually, all the bites that we see are something related to you're walking down the trail, you didn't notice where you're going, you stepped on one, it has a reflexive bite where it just strikes out of defense, and those are often dry. They're often dry bites that do not have any venom in them. But you always want to take it seriously, and if you get bitten, what's the first aid measure you need to know about is get your cell phone out and call 911, because the antidote for the venom is available in emergency rooms, and you need to get there as fast as you can, and it usually requires ambulance or helicopter transport. So I'm going to turn the stage over to our friend Tom, who actually was bitten by a rattlesnake outside his back door in Chino Valley last September, and he lived to tell about it. So tell us about it, Tom.
Yay, Tom.
Okay. Well, Dan kind of touched on it. You know, the snakes kind of bite defensively. They try and get away. And this snake that was at our house was trying to get away. He was at our house, and my dog was harassing with the snake, so I removed the dog, and the snake was there. And left to his own devices, he probably would have gone off on his own. My neighbor was over, and so I went and got a bucket and a floor scraper, and we tried to get the snake in a bucket because I wanted to carry him a couple mountains over and release him. Because I don't like to kill things in nature. I think there's a place for them. The snake would not go in the bucket, so we dispatched the snake. We cut it off probably about 2 inches below his head. So his head was there, and cut him off about 4 inches down from his nose and cut his head off. So it was separated from the body of the snake. And I went out about an hour and 15 minutes later. The body of the snake was limp. I picked it up, I looked at it, I was checking out the buttons on the tail, and I thought, what a beautiful animal. Put it in the bucket, didn't even think about it, reached down to pick up that head, and the head spun around 180 degrees and lashed onto my finger. So you can go online, you can look headless rattlesnake up online, boom, it'll come up in an instant, and there's several websites that will show headless rattlesnakes with their mouths open, ready to attack. Come to find out, I believe, and I'm not sure about this, but I was told now there's 8 heart systems throughout a snake's body. So just because you cut the head off doesn't mean you killed the snake. The old wives' tale was don't mess with a snake until the sun goes down. And that's true, the snake stayed alive. And it was very quick. And I've got pretty good reflexes, I stay in good shape, and I couldn't get away quick enough. There's a couple kinds of venom that the snakes will get you with. One is a hemotoxin, and that will attack your blood, and it'll inhibit your body from being able to clot your blood. So you can bleed out on your internal organs. Or then there's the hemotoxin and the neurotoxin. And the neurotoxin is the one that really attacks your nervous system and stuff. So the snake that I got bit by, they were really checking my blood levels, and Dan was watching my blood levels, keeping track of my red blood cells for months afterwards. I had to go get blood drawn pretty regular to check my red blood cells, white blood cells, make sure my blood was good. So this snake and my blood cells were good from the day I went to Banner Hospital. I spent 2 days in an ICU. My blood levels were good from the day I went in there. So the snake that bit me was more neurotoxin. And I immediately went into anaphylactic, not immediately, I immediately got swelling in my finger. I got bit in my index finger, both sides of this joint. And about 4 days ago, I was doing a bunch of work in my shop with a hammer, making some longbows, and my finger swelled up again. Now it's been more than 8 months. And the swelling comes back. It's like severe arthritis. I still can't make a fist. It's been 8.5 months. What happened is I immediately started getting swelling. went to the hospital, had my wife meet me. My wife wasn't home. I had to meet her at the highway in Chino, drive to Yavapai Hospital. And by the time I got to around Tim's Toyota on Willow Creek there, I passed out. So I blacked out. And when I got to the hospital, my heart rate or my blood pressure was 67 over 38. So I was crashing severely. I was in anaphylactic shock. They were watching my airways. They had a crash cart right there to apply stuff to me. Now once you get there, what they have to do is draw blood to make sure that you're envenomated. And unfortunately in Yavapai County here, we don't have a real, like a poison control center here. So being that it's a toxin or it's a venom, it falls into the category of poison. And so I had to go to Phoenix, to Banner Hospital, by ambulance. But what they did here in Yavapai, they do keep anti-venom here. They have to take your blood, check it for toxicity levels to make sure you've been envenomated, and then they start putting in vials of anti-venom. So they gave me four vials of anti-venom in Yavapai, and then they only give the anti-venom about every 4 hours. So that gave us time to get in an ambulance and go to Banner Hospital in Phoenix, allow them an hour to draw blood again and check my toxicity levels again, give me another 4 vials at Banner, and then I also received another 4 vials after that, and then another 2 after that. So I got 14 vials total from messing with a snake that left to its own devices would have left the area, but the thing that I didn't want to have is have it around my house so that my wife or dogs would have gotten bit. So trying to remove it, rule of thumb, and now I've always been told this and I didn't do it, is if you have to dispatch a snake, cut the head off, dig a hole immediately, bury it 1 foot deep, and put some rocks over it too so no animals can dig it up, because that thing is still, even if it was dead and wasn't able to turn around and bite me, the venom sacs in its glands, if an animal were to eat that, would probably die or be really sick. So yeah, that's my deal. I'm happy to be alive for it.
Good. Thanks, Tom.
Yes. Oh, we have another story.
Dr. Morris,
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Rosemary.
sometimes when we're hiking, we're out either in a place where you can't get cell phone service because the mountains or whatever interfering, or we're in an area like when we go around Lynx Lake, around the far side, it's real up and down and rocky. What do we do if perchance we do happen to step on one, or if a dog does?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Now, if you're with someone else, the person who is envenomated should sit down, lie down, put your feet up, raise the extremity that has the bite in it, and do not use a tourniquet. Do not use the old-fashioned cowboy remedy of sticking the pocket knife in and sucking on it or whatever. That's a no-no. Do not put ice on it if you have ice. I would recommend you always have a cell phone with you, and the survivor, the other person in the party, needs to go to a place that has cell phone service and call 911 immediately and tell them that you have a snake bite problem. And that's the best thing you do. Yes.
I found online that after a snake bite, it's best not to elevate it up above the heart. And unfortunately, on the way to Yavapai, I was fine in the car, but I was very sick and getting sicker. And I told my wife, I'm really getting sick, and she said, well, why don't you put it over your head? And I did, and that's when I passed out. So what it does is it takes it right into your heart, right into your bloodstream. So they say keep the extremity lower than the heart if you can. Get in the shade and stop moving. Try and abate your movement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And when you're with a pet, it's a really big challenge. Because you really need to keep them as quiet as you can. If you have a small pet and you can carry them, carry them. Yeah, well, I have an 80-pound dog, and there's no way I'm going to be carrying him out there. So if there are two people, one stays with the pet, the other one goes and gets help. You can...
Can you call 911 for that?
Well, you're going to pay for it. Yeah, you're going to pay for it, so you're going to pay the full price for a rescue. The best thing you can do is if your dog isn't naturally afraid of snakes, and many dogs are. I mean, I have a dog that doesn't even want to walk next to a hose that's on the ground in a snaky position. You know, if it's going back and forth, he won't go near it. So many dogs are already snake-proofed, but there is an immunization that you can get, a rattlesnake vaccine. If your dog is envenomated, they still have to go through the whole process of treatment, but the vaccine itself has triggered the immune system to attack the venom first. So the immune system can get in there and reduce how bad the bite is going to be. The vaccine is 2 immunizations in the first year, about 4 weeks apart, and then a booster every year. And it's important to know that that vaccine only provides protection for about 8 months. So if you started in, it's the hiking season, you started in May, you finish it in June or July, and then the computer system of the veterinarian's office will send you a reminder in July, and you'll get in August. We've already missed a big chunk of the snake season. So remember, they always need to have, regardless of when you start it, they need to be boosted in March or April at the beginning of snake season, depending on where you're hiking.
Okay. Say we were on the far side of Lynx Lake and one of the dogs get bitten. How do we get them out of there?
Well, if you're in a non-motorized area, about the only way you're going to get them out of there is have them walk slowly or carry them. If you're in a motorized area, you can get, some kind of motorized thing to them. You can call animal control and see if they will help you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can call animal control, which is just calling the sheriff's office.
Okay.
The sheriff's office does dispatch for animal control. So that would be probably calling 911 would be the thing to do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since being bitten by a rattlesnake, I'm really hyper vigilant about them. So for our dogs, we went down to Phoenix, and there's a place you can go online, and it's called Viper Avoidance.
I've heard about that.
And what it basically trains your dog to do, so I took both of my Labradors through that class, and it's a one-time visit, and then after about 4 weeks you go and do a follow-up. And it really teaches the dogs to smell the snake before they even see it. So they typically will smell a rattlesnake, has a unique smell other than different than other snakes do. So my dogs found a snake skin that was shed out near our house just earlier in the week, and boy, they stayed away from it. And it was just the skin.
Do they use a different species?
No, they use rattlesnake.
I mean, different types of rattlesnakes?
I'm not sure. They said rattlesnake pretty much. So it was in New River, so it would be species probably close to around here, blacktail.
And another interesting thing about snake venom is that all the different species have different mixes of venom. Different ages will have different mixes of venom. So you really, people say, oh, that's a particularly dangerous snake. Well, maybe. It's very unique to the individual, unique to the species, the age, the diet, the prey. So there are a lot of factors that go in, and there are a bunch of neurotoxins that are mixed together and hemotoxins that are mixed together. So it's quite a cocktail that you get. Thanks.
And so moving on from the rattlesnake, we have the Gila Monster, which it's just unheard of to die from a Gila Monster bite. I don't know if they've ever actually recorded a definite death from this, but you don't want to be bitten by one because they latch on and don't give up. And their fangs have, rather than the venom sac like the rattlesnake, where it's actually like an injection where there's a syringe inside the rattlesnake's head that's injecting the venom into your tissues. With the Gila Monster, it's a more primitive system where there's just a groove in the fang, and so it has to stay latched on so that the venom can just drip into your tissues. So it's a more primitive system But I have actually seen back in the days when I worked in the emergency room, someone come in with a Gila Monster latched onto his arm. It's not a pretty sight, and nobody's happy about it, and it's a real challenge to treat. And the Gila Monster ends up dying usually. Now the toads this is more pertinent to the veterinarian. There's it's a classic situation where your dog's out running around and he finds a toad and puts it in his mouth, of course. And the toad secretes the toxin, which then causes hypersalivation and confusion and can cause seizures and other problems with the dog. So if your dog's salivating like crazy and acting funny, you can bet there's a toad involved. So call the vet.
Well, actually, get a hose, get a garden hose, and flush out the mouth. Just flush and flush and flush and flush and flush, because that's going to do more good. And it is a problem that veterinarians see a lot, and grandparents, veterinarians and grandparents see this problem a lot from kids catching the toads and then they
Really?
get it in their eyes and in their mouths. And,
That's yeah. So there's a lot to be aware of out here. So what I want to see what we're talking about here, to get back kind of full circle with this talk, is that we started out talking about biophilia and how we have this connection with nature, and we need to spend time out in nature, and we live in this wonderful climate in Arizona, and yet we have all of these things to scare us out there. So I want to put it in perspective that it is extremely rare to have a snake bite, for example, and then it's even more rare to have a disability from a snake bite, let alone a death. So, and it's the same way with all of these other things. Your risk of dying from a snake bite is 1 in 50 million per year in America. So that's pretty darn low risk. So the odds of being struck by lightning in any given year are 5 times greater. So that puts it in perspective. Lightning. So here's scorpions, and this is the bark scorpion, and it's the venomous one in Arizona, and it's somewhat of a stealthy actor here because it's one of the more benign looking scorpions. It's not the one with the great big pincers. It's a smaller, kind of diminutive scorpion, and it hangs out on the barks of trees. Now, when we were in the Grand Canyon off the North Rim on Pete's Creek, the light was low. It was after dark. We were in our little headlights, and I was going down to the creek to get water to make tea with or whatever, and I stepped down with the little bag for the water, and I put my left hand against the tree to balance myself, and it felt like somebody shot an electric current into my wrist, and it was the most intense pain you could imagine, and it felt like there were lightning bolts coming out my fingertips. And a friend that was with us was a doctor, and he found the actual scorpion. In fact, he found 2 of them, and they were mating. So he said, you may have gotten a double whammy here, and they were really upset that you interrupted them, so you could expect a bad night. And he got out his first aid kit, which included some narcotic pain relievers. And I said, wait a minute, we have to hike up this windy trail tomorrow. I don't really want to take that because I'm not sure if I would have a side effect that would last overnight and affect my balance as we're walking up this trail. So Nita kept me company during the night and read to me, and it was a long night. And here, the only position I could get in where I felt good, I was holding it up like this. As soon as I'd let it down, it would start throbbing. And if any pressure was on my arm, or if I bumped my arm, there was a painful tuning fork sensation. It actually felt like my whole arm was vibrating, but I could look at it and see that it wasn't. So I was kind of getting the feeling like, this is a strange nervous system toxin that's doing this to me. And it kind of reminded me of what I would imagine a carpal tunnel from hell would be like, because it was starting at my wrist, and if I bumped my wrist, I would get these lightning bolts coming out my fingertips. It slowly got better over the next 48 hours, and then it was gradually improving, and finally we were sitting at the restaurant at Cliff Dwellers on our drive home, and I noticed, hey, it's gone. I'm fine now. No more problem. It was completely dissipated. So That's my experience with,
There really is no real treatment for it then, just kind of
well,
suffer through
the
it?
Poison Center has some anti-venom, and that's mostly for the elderly and infirm people who are you know, have a lot of medical problems that
Okay.
might have a serious reaction, or small babies
Okay,
can also have a problem from it. So they reserve the anti-venom for them. But if you're in proximity to such a treatment center. So now we have the asp caterpillar, and we'll take on a description of that with Nita, who was the victim of one of these. So take it away,
Okay.
Nita.
Yeah, I have there have been 28 of these reported in the state of Arizona ever. 28 reported, and I was one of them.
Girl.
So, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, yeah, they're adorable. I mean, look at that. It looks like Donald Trump. It has a Donald Trump kind of look to it, and you know, they're very, very cuddly. And these are common in the southeast. No, yeah, not in the south. Yeah, in the southeast. And if they aren't startled, or hurt or hassled, they won't do anything. Okay, so these are a very nasty, poisonous little caterpillar that you got to really hassle them to do something. And we were out on a backpacking trip on the Verde River, and we had this cool new chair, a new backpacking chair. That I've always been looking for the perfect backpacking chair, and I thought this was it. This had to be it, you know, because it's light, it's easy to get up, easy to get down, and Dan was fishing. I was watching, you know, helping, and which consisted of sitting in my chair watching, you know, getting mesmerized by his casting back and forth into the water, and then dissecting the fish when they come out. And so I was sitting in my chair, and we got up because he was going to go downstream a little bit further. And this lightweight chair, I took it and pulled it over rested it on the top of my head, and you know, I'm walking along with my cool new chair. And this asp caterpillar, it was fall, so in Arizona you're going to find it in the Verde River corridor in the fall in sycamore country. Okay, those are 3 things that you need for the asp caterpillar in Arizona. And so the asp caterpillar had crawled up on the chair and was on the crossbar thing underneath where my legs had been, and it was looking for a place to weave a cocoon, to spin a cocoon. And so it was there on the crossbar, and when I took it like this and put it over my head, I was fine until I started bending down to get under things, and I rammed it against my neck right in here.
oh,
And these hairs up in here are hollow, and they have venom in them. And they also can be released, so they get released as little venom needles. They're really, really tiny, and they get in the skin and work their way underneath the surface layer of the skin immediately. So they continue to secrete venom until they run out, which can last sometimes a week.
oh, geez.
And so I immediately had the feeling that I had been stung by about 40 wasps in one spot on my neck. And pretty soon I was dizzy. The thing about this is that it's a really powerful blend of neurotoxins that are all related to pain. So it opens all the pain gates in your body. So all of your pain pathways just are open and are flowing freely. And I would give birth back to back a dozen times before I would get stung by an asp caterpillar again. It was really something. And there's nothing you can do but wait and do supportive care. At that point in time, we were far away from where we could hike out, and it wasn't possible to really do anything but wait. So I lay down, and Dan stood guard, and after about 6 hours I could walk, and after about 12 hours I felt okay, but my neurochemistry was messed up, and I really couldn't think straight. It was almost 3 months before I felt like I was myself again. It was several months before I felt right again. So it was quite an experience. So if you see these little guys, I would leave them alone. And once again, it's extremely rare. I mean, it's extremely rare. This guy that Dan said had spent his whole professional life on the bird. He had never seen one. And I just got lucky. So I have a cool story to tell.
Thanks, Tina. Okay, so lightning, 1 in 500,000 people, and then your risk of being killed by lightning is 1.5 million per year, so that's pretty rare. Now you can increase your odds though by being out with golfers. If you're out there, your lightning rod essentially holding your golf clubs, and likewise the fisherman with the fishing rod is also lightning rod. And a friend of ours, a young man, 32 years old, died on Big Lake a couple of years ago. And the thing about this is, the recommendation is immediately get out of the area. So what do you mean by immediately? What does immediately mean? Is it when you hear thunder, or was it when you see lightning in the distance? When is immediate? Well, it's actually when the clouds are gathering, and if it's stormy weather, if it's monsoon season, if there's a cloud gathering anywhere near you, get out of there, because the first strike could kill you, and that's what happened to our friend Drew Pearson, who's actually off duty from working for Fish and Game by himself, and he got the first strike of the storm. So you need to stay away from objects that conduct electricity, obviously, and you don't want to use a cliff or a rocky overhang for shelter, and don't shelter under an isolated tree. Never lie flat on the ground. So what the heck are you supposed to do with that? Just run like that. It's, generally you want to get into a low area like a grove of trees that are low, away from cliffs and metal objects. So let's talk about some of our favorite activities we do and what we need to be prepared. Okay, it's like the old motto of always be prepared. So we should all, most of us enjoy hiking, being out in nature, we should carry a day pack of some type. You can either use a shoulder pack or a hip pack. But the most important thing in there, as we mentioned, is a cell phone, because this is what can save your life so much. Then work your way down through a hat, sunscreen.
We're going to see how I did while Dan goes through the list.
Right, yeah, see if Nita has everything here. We really recommend you use walking sticks because they can prevent falls. They take the strain off of your arms and legs, off of your legs, put a little bit of the strain onto your arms, your upper body, so you distribute some of the weight. They can increase the amount of calories you're burning by up to 10 or 15%, depending on what kind of trail you're on. So they're definitely a good thing to use. They're adjustable, so you get just the right height. And the longer the hike you're on and the steeper the hike, the more you need them, because your knees and the hips and feet are going to appreciate it the longer you go. So,
and for the hikers, I will demonstrate how to adjust these, how you want them adjusted when we're done.
So if you have a bad shoulder, because I have a bad shoulder, and I was using them the other day around Lakes Lake, when I got back, my shoulder hurt a lot worse.
okay, if you have a shoulder problem, I would just take one stick and use the other one, and until your shoulder's doing better. And then you need to take water, lots of water, and you may want to have sort of an emergency kit. It's a good idea to have a first aid kit. And what first aid kit do you need? Now you can go wild with these first aid kits. And the best reference and the best expert I know for helping you decide is a guy named Mike Townsend down at Granite Mountain Outfitters. He worked for 30 years for the Sheriff's Search and Rescue team, and he sells a variety of these things in his little shop there, Granite Mountain Outfitters down
And I
Granite.
have cards here if you want.
And Anita has his cards, and she has the minimalist first aid kit there. It's sealed. It has a variety of bandages and even medications inside, a set of tweezers to take cactus spines out of your behind if you so need that.
And this is really invaluable. I would take a really good pair of tweezers before I would take a knife. If I had to choose one or the other, I would take a really good pair of tweezers.
Sure.
There's nothing like being able to get cactus thorns out. And duct tape works sometimes for that as well, but a good pair of tweezers, not the cheap ones.
And if you're going to be out for more than a couple hours, you're going to need extra sunscreen because you want to reapply every 2 hours. And then of course other options include a flashlight. What if you're injured and you have to be out after night? You might be able to summon help with a flashlight. You need to make sure you don't get lost, follow the trail signs. If exploring alone, make sure somebody knows where you're going to be.
Okay, this is a great thing to invest in. It's an emergency water filter. Has a straw, and you just stick the straw in whatever little pocket of water you can find, and it will get out all the bacteria and the protozoa. It won't get viruses, but if you can find just a little bit of water, this thing, it doesn't weigh much. You can throw it in your day pack. So that's a good thing to have.
Right, hiking on the desert.
We didn't put on this.
Sure. Here's the space blanket. And I don't know if you're familiar with what this is, but it's a very thin product that is coated with a reflective surface that was, this was developed during the satellite NASA program to protect satellites from the sun's rays, and also to focus the sunlight for the photocells that the satellites are powered by. And that little container gives you enough of a blanket that could save your life in a hypothermia situation where if you have to sit out after night after falling in the creek and breaking your ankle, wrap yourself up in this, and your body heat is reflected back to you so that you can stay warm.
Also emergency poncho.
Yeah, so keep a
I
lot
like
off of
carrying
it.
just a lightweight little poncho,
Sure.
just in my pack, but this will serve as an emergency poncho too.
Right.
Super lightweight. You can fit 2 people in here if you can ever get it unfolded. This is probably like 20 years old. I mean, it really is amazing how it reflects the heat. We've used these before and we've been stuck out.
Right.
What's cold.
And if there's a party looking for you, a helicopter party, they'll have their floodlights and they'll be able to see this at night reflected. And during the day, they'll obviously see it with a reflected sunlight. So it's just a really good thing. Hey, there it is. Hi, Jim. Welcome. Come on in.
Hi.
Just in time. Have you ever been bitten by a rattlesnake? I have a story to tell. We're comparing stories.
Okay.
I know he likes the outdoors too. So moving on then, Anita's going to say a couple words about safe gardening, because there can be hazards in the garden.
Okay, so safe gardening, you got your insects, of course. The scorpions that you find around in the garden, it's usually not the bark scorpion. They'll give you a pretty good jolt. Keep it elevated, keep yourself quiet and calm. It'll go away within an hour or so. The ones that are considered life-threatening are the bark scorpion. So, but yeah, of course, if you have your gloves on, you're not going to get stung by a scorpion. And so wear your gloves. I know it's really hard. I do this all the time. I'm wandering around in the garden. It looks like something needs to be pulled up, so I kind of get in there and start pulling it up. And before you know it, you have, gashes along your cuticles and, scorpion stings on your hands. And, take the time to put on your gloves, put on your sun hat. If you're doing a repetitive task that you're going to be doing over and over and over again, first of all, do it with good form. Make sure your tools are in good shape. If you have a shovel that you've been using for 25 years, you can bet that that thing is you're having a much harder time getting through the soil than you really should. So have your tools checked and sharpened if necessary. Use long-handled tools so you won't have to bend over as much. Switch it out. We're all better on one side, and we have a tendency to just use one side. But force yourself to use both sides so that you don't fatigue your back or your arms or your legs. Switch it out. Make sure you switch it out. Wear sturdy shoes. This is huge. So you're out there. I think you're going to just pop a few things in the ground with a trowel, but then you discover that 3 inches down the ground gets pretty hard. So you go get the shovel, right? Well, so I have my lightweight tennis shoes on, and I'm going to use the shovel. Well, invariably, I'm pushing on the shovel and my foot flings off to the side because I don't have sturdy shoes on. So if you're going to go outside to work in the garden, put some sturdy shoes on to do it. And don't get so obsessed that you miss it. Make sure that you take plenty of water when you go out there, even if you're only going out to walk around a little bit, because you can be sure that you're going to be there for a half hour, probably working, and then you'll be dehydrated when you come in. So take your water, take your sun protection, and use tools that are appropriate for the job. Switch it out a little bit when you're doing the job. Wear sturdy shoes, and then have a really wonderful time in your garden.
Are there any spiders or anything you have to really be watched for, venomous that could
Well,
cause
there's
problems?
always the black widow, and my garden goes down a hillside, and it's got rock walls, and those rock walls have black widows in them.
Really?
So yeah, so just be careful about where you see messy webs. Messy webs, really, really messy webs are
What
black
if
widow
you are
webs.
bit by a black widow?
What if you were bit by a black widow, which is something I've never experienced?
Because I did find one in my house.
Mhm.
And I know it was because I looked at it. That's a different looking
Yeah.
spider.
There's-
I put something on it and
Yeah, once again, they're not aggressive. I mean, they'll
I killed it and turned it over and there was the hourglass. So
Yeah.
I was sure it was
Yeah.
a black
Well, the
widow.
main symptom is cramps. You get intense muscle cramping from a black widow,
Okay.
right? So if you have a muscle relaxant, you can take that. A pain medicine can help. If it's real severe, the emergency room can give you intravenous calcium gluconate, which will help with the cramps. So, yeah, and always call, and we'll be happy to talk to you about your symptoms, and at least give you
But if
some
you have your gloves on,
moral
you're not
support.
likely to get,
Yeah.
if you have your gloves on, you're not likely to reach in somewhere
We've got a
unexpected.
lot of the rocks. We've got like a sloping yard.
Right.
We've got a lot of the rocks and I've noticed a bunch of spiders running around in it, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were.
Yeah, the black widows will make a very messy web. So you'll
Okay.
see just a big mess of web there.
And they're more
Okay.
active at night too,
Much
so
more
if you're
active.
going out after dark
You're
and
not gonna see them during
working
the
in
day.
your garden or with a flashlight or a headlight, you're more likely to get in trouble with them.
Now, if they bite one of the dogs, a big dog, would that cause a problem?
It can, yeah, and
Okay.
the treatment is the same,
Okay,
yeah. Dogs usually won't mess with them,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay?
We're moving along then. So, looking at all of these horrible things that could happen to you, it's even more horrible to stay at home and be a couch potato, because your risk to your health is greater by sitting or lying on the couch than it is getting out into nature. And we're starting to hear this more and more, that sitting is the new smoking. Remember how smoking was the absolute worst thing you could do for yourself. And now that we all quit smoking, sitting is now the worst thing you can do for yourself. And the poor folks that smoked gave themselves lung disease so that they don't have the lung capacity to get up and hike. They're really in a bind, because then now they're sitting after doing all that smoking. So the things that we talked about, putting them in perspective, they're much less of a chance that you will be bitten by something or develop skin cancer than there is by developing a problem from inactivity. Now, of all the things that we've talked about, I didn't talk about the most dangerous thing as we go outside to enjoy nature. What is the most absolute thing you can, what is the greatest summer hazard, in other words? What is it? And I just had this newspaper, the Courier, from this Sunday, and the crash fatalities in 2014 were higher than they were previously. They were up to 43 fatalities in our little county. And Friday is the most dangerous time to be out there. So that's when probably people from out of town are coming in to enjoy our beautiful climate here. So wear your seat belts, drive defensively. These fatalities, the interview with law enforcement here notes that it's usually an excessive speed. Someone's driving too fast, in a hurry to get somewhere, maybe to a trailhead, who knows. So drive defensively, wear your seat belt. And on that note, I'll open it to questions. We have a a drawing. We're going to do a drawing of for some items that could help you enjoy nature. So hang around and see if your lucky number comes up.